Nipa kunle namdol shing yende gungi genpa bo senjen gungi nye jiko tamje genla gun chanze Omen jigi nge bodane dusum sangye gungi ngowo ni erasim chugu ngasuma denzebe Tsewe lame shabla so wande Dambichu Nyamsulembe Kunlun Sangbu Nishungi Sambatan Janjubgi Sim Saldabikoni Dambichu Nyamsulembe Shu
Please start by engendering excellent motivation, which is twofold, the mind of renunciation and the mind of awakening, but each other, thinking that in this Dharma session you're going to practice the sacred Dharma, going to put it into practice. And then in that spirit, please listen to the teachings.
Shirab Lamdokjegi Shirab Nambasumji Kola Shubikabre Dateni Dini Gomjungi Shirab Ta Gomjungi Shirab Sedi Nilu Gombala Teni Gomjungi Shirab de Keni Teni Jishin Misawam Mishepin Debale Tolku Resni Sungare Tini ta Nilu Gom Sedi Tini The committee Nilu Gom Goyeti Ani Niluk se di kola Shubikabre Ta Nilu was Chidang Dembashiki Nilu Dan Tawakadaki Chakashi Nilu Lasoba Chidang Tinzu Chazang Aransu Shigugure Komgugure Iniyan Kapsu Baba ta Chaka Chimbo Tang Tinzu Kapsula Nyamlin Chiong Dutini Nilu se tela Lungubu Nilu Tang Simgubu Nilu Sine Naba Niki Konitini Gomgubure Sine Sumbare Tate Nani Kasantini Lungubu Nilu Kordi Tanto Dizam Shusini Tini Diring Nipata Simgubu Nilu Seti Kande Yimbata Kandis Komgubu Yemekor Tinzuani Rimbashin Shugins
So we are still discussing the stage of the path, that of wisdom or insight that we'll need to engender in order to realize the path. And as we have seen, that wisdom is threefold. And right now we're still discussing the third type of wisdom or insight, the one that arises from our practice of our meditation. So that wisdom arises from our meditation on the natural state. And when that wisdom that realizes natural state dawns in our mind stream, the obscuration that prevented us from seeing reality clearly as it is being cleared away. So because we are meditating on natural state, I thought it's good to discuss what we mean by this term natural state. Of course, we can understand the nature, reality, referring to the truth of, for example, the Four Noble Truths or the Four Dharma Seals all of that is also extremely important for us to understand, to meditate upon, right? That's also the truth we need to realize. But in the context of these Dharma sessions, we have been discussing meditation on Mahamudra, or the Great Seal. And here the natural state is slightly different from just understanding the Four Noble Truths, etc. So here we have again two aspects when it comes to explaining the nature of reality. The one is understanding, realizing the nature of objects, the forms, right? And that we have covered briefly in the previous Dharma session. And today we'll continue with the second aspect of the nature, or realizing nature. That's realizing nature of the mind, or the subject, right? And so today, therefore, I will briefly explain how to understand the nature of the mind and how we should then meditate on that, or how should we practice nature of the mind.
Sim ngabu niluk di tokse di chidang chebai na che ki ningbu daw chire. Chidang che ki ningbu dang chidado dini anzo da chachen dang zochen la sobe kapsula dini sim solwa sini sigure na ki di shidagi dini neka chumbache da ge chumbache da dini chigla muzin chigure.
Sem Tsorva, mind, Tsorva, emotional mind? No, sorry.
Mare chidang sim solwa.
Tsolva, Gondа. Нас тут учится, но течик целера.
Anzu chachin zochen kapsula ti dinde kapsula da sim solwa sigirwa.
Generally, realization of nature of the mind is the essence, like it's the real, can say, essence of the whole Buddha Dharma. But especially it becomes essential, really vital, crucial teachings or practice realization of nature of the mind in the traditions such as Mahamudra and Dzogchen, we can say the Great Seal and the Great Perfection, where the mind, we're identifying the mind, kind of looking for what is the mind, right? And what is the nature of the mind is the cornerstone of the whole tradition, right? It's the most essential teachings then in the tradition of Mahamudra and Dzogchen.
Da chidang chachin dang zochen nyamlin chasang di sim ki niluk tobe ki degarang sunguyore. Dini pena tanda chachin malam dawa chi chashaba ina ya woki nguishi ki dini nyamlin chasang di da sim ki niluk di karere di da zo saji niki kone sungyong re. Sim ki niluk di tawe tenla babsul dang dini sim ki niluk di gombe nyamsil lensu se. Chidang tawa gomba choba tribu dini sungyo ina da zo di degarang re. Di indu da sim ngubu niluk se di nang la ni 냠린 차사 기 점시다우디 차되게 그래.
Generally, all practices in the traditions of Mahamudra and Great Perfection aim to realize the nature of the mind. Right? All of them really have that goal. And especially here in the Mahamudra aspiration prayer, right? Again, the main practice of this Mahamudra tradition, as we see from this prayer, is again to realize the nature of the mind. And it's done by following two ways. The one is we resolve the nature of the mind, ascertain it by means of the view. And the second way is that we actually put it into practice. We apply it, right? We practice it by means of meditation. This way, of course, generally view, meditation, and conduct, all three elements are always, present. All Buddhist teachings, they're really important, but especially here in the Mahamudra aspiration prayer, when it comes to realizing the nature of the mind, we have this two aspects, two approaches: resolving it with the view, and then practicing it with meditation. And it's like, in this way, it's a working basis, right? We can say these two approaches are really like the working basis for that realization to take place in our being.
다 진리리 인도 산이나냐 아주 따와던 공부던 주 시베 값을라 된소콜라 또스 개바용 그래 이나양다 드링에 심을 내룩세디 되기지 아주 이나 다 지된다고 지 와. 능에 마슈게 인스 답되고도 지
In the following Dharma sessions, we will address in detail the aspect, the approach of resolving the view when we reach that stage of the path, right, that deals with the view. And also we will again elaborate on the second aspect of meditation, right, again, when we reach that aspect, stage of the path. But today, for now, I just wanted to give, let's say, kind of a general introduction or sort of synopsis of what is the nature of the mind.
다 더 심기 내룩스나야 심기 내룩디 똑버제 발라 따와당 공바 림바치 도고 그러와 어디 도당기 아니 림바게 아니 지된다고 지금 쇼인스
To make it a bit more clear, actually, what I'm going to discuss today, Khenpo says, is more like giving a general introduction, not just to the nature of the mind, but rather to these two approaches. It's going to be a general introduction to approach of resolving the nature of the mind by means of the view, right? And then realizing the nature of the mind by means of practice of meditation. Without going into much detail, which will follow later in the next Dharma sessions, today I'm just going to give overview of those two approaches.
다치단 쌤기 내룩디 가르치니 개좀 붙이기에 세디 만화수 커와라 커디게래 동안 연구여래 커와레 타르고 그래 되니 커와다 냥데 세디 니가 두세기 짜와디 셈라 두게래 숨거래 셈세디 커와다 냥데 니기 메인 스위치 다워디 switch 셈 차디게 imsin tende la teni te ti nega ji zi yore chaji molam ki nang la wo la tende ji sung ye deni marik korwe kyaso kor deni to na sangge shena me sechi korwa tang nyangde se di semgi niluk di tokpa tang ma tokpe kongni sha kuku yo pa indu ndi nega chumpa chi tsikyo re.
Why we consider realization of the nature of the mind being extremely important in the Buddha Dharma? Why is it so crucial to really realize, to come to really know intimately the nature of our own minds? Well, because for now, all of us are cycling in samsara, cyclic existence, where we experience myriad of sufferings. And of course, if we aim really to free ourselves, to be liberated, then we need to understand that actually the root of samsara and nirvana, right, is the mind. Basically, samsara, cyclic existence, and nirvana, going beyond suffering, both come down to the mind. It's like the mind is the main switching from samsara to nirvana, right? So it's extremely crucial point. We can see that from the 2 lines of Mahamudra Respiration Prayer. On the verse 13, the first 2 lines read, "Whoever does not realize this cycles in the ocean of samsara. Whoever realizes this is no other than a Buddha." So this realizing this refers exactly to realization of the nature of the mind. Whoever does not realize it, that being is in samsara. That's samsara. Lacking realization of nature of the mind, that's samsara. As soon one realizes the nature of the mind, one is no other than a Buddha, right? That's nirvana. So whether we are in samsara or nirvana really comes down to whether or not we have realized the nature of the mind. So again, the nature of the mind and that realization is of utmost importance, as you can see from these statements.
나 chidang anzu tegar keje shebayina, keje dibayina semgi niluk di kareres dini len tungtung jikya bayina wesal ware se di len di yungu ware ta di to zo sebu sebayina saltong sunjuk re se di keje di yungu ware.
So if we were to answer directly and briefly to this very important question, what is this nature of the mind? What is it, right? If to really want to give a very succinct, very direct answer, we're going to say it's luminosity, clear light. Another translation of the term. But if we were to kind of elucidate, clarify that one word, luminosity, we're going to further say that actually the nature of the mind is the unity of luminosity and emptiness.
ngunzu tati zo chege ki keje shebayina ni sarma dan chajin kapsula dini shi chashen da gyud deshe nyingbu nyungme ki sems dini nganzu da ingma dawa yinbayina ni semgi dorje da kundu sangpo se dinzu chasan di dende ki semgi ngowo 살동 순주기 챙기 남라인 숨바래.
Synonyms, right? If we were to give a little bit more of the kind of, if we go into more of dharmic terminology, right, then we would say there are some specific terms used in various traditions to address the nature of the mind. Like in the newer schools, that is to say, the later translations, where Mahamudra is prevalent, the tradition of Mahamudra, the nature of the mind is known as the Buddha nature, known as the innate ordinary mind, right? But in the school of earlier translations, that's to say Nigma, we also find other synonyms to nature of the mind, such as calling it a Vajra or Samanta Bhadra. And so we should understand that all those various specific kind of dharmic terms refer to the same point, that's the nature of the mind.
당아주 디든다디다 레라부라부지 돔라부지 겸니 슈바이나 상계기 송샤바 직당 드니 단당아주 차진 몰람 과랑기낭 예베기 송샤바 림바쉐르 다든즈베 네가다오레 나란수이는지 스스기 냠랭가리 지게나 냠랭 차상기 돔라부디 안수이나다 blueprint 라부디와 딘즈낭라 랩도바지 지구거 네가다오디 페나 당이 가리슈고에서나 셈기 네룩디 또에디 최기 닝보이나 데 냠렌제 용바 캡슐라 똑똑다고디 림바다고디 다스스기 지 dom시다고디 프레임워크다고디 간데질라더니 돔 잡고 그래서디 더디 녜바치고 봐 다디 남주 간주 상계기 실증의 도그나 상계기 숭의 왕도 제용도 실증의 도그나라 셈라 셈마치데 셈게랑신 외살바오 세긴 디츠기 나라 따디 냠랭게 림바차상디 주 창대버다고지 여래
So what is important for us is to have the knowledge, understanding of the blueprint, kind of the summary of how to realize the nature of the mind. What are the various stages, right, of practice, whether according to the teachings of the Buddha himself or according to the Mahamudra tradition, right? There is the summary, sort of, as Khenpo said in English, like a blueprint, framework that we need to understand, right? And really, really remember, because, well, realizing the nature of the mind is the essence of the whole of the Buddha Dharma. So, of course, for us, then we absolutely need to be very clear about, well, what is the sort of like a frameworks, like a short summary of those stages, right? Stages of realizing the nature of the mind. We need to be certain about those points. So if we look at the Buddhist teachings, specifically in the Prajna Paramita literature, there he made a very clear statement that actually outlines all the stages of realizing the nature of the mind. As the Buddha said, as for the mind, comma, there is no mind, comma. The nature of the mind is luminosity. So we can see that all these various steps towards realizing the nature of the mind, they're all included just in this one statement.
Tatinala tunda sum raw chungudwa semla se di tunda chigre rimba tangbore sem machite se di rimba nipare tini sem ye ranshin wesaba wo se di rimba sumbare.
So what are the here we can see very clearly three stages, three sort of first steps towards realizing the nature of the mind, right? 3 points are being made. Well, the first stage, the point is as for the mind. So the mind, right, that's the first stage here. The second one is there is no mind. That's the next level. And then from there we go to the next level or stage. The nature of the mind is luminosity. It's in this way we have this 3 stages, right, steps towards that realization.
Adi indu tsik di nangla semla sem machite sem ye ranshin wesaba wo se di nangla samna yago tangba ina tini tekpa chichung niga tang donga tamche ki nyamlengi rimbasana mindu chegi nyingbu dawdi dinala changdebe suraw chere.
If we think carefully about this statement and the words that the Buddha uttered, as for the mind, there is no mind. The nature of the mind is luminosity. We can see that here we can find the essence of all the vehicles, that's to say the fundamental vehicle of Shavakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and the essence of the greater vehicle, the Mahayana. We can also see that this one statement incorporates in itself the essence of the Sutric tradition and also the Tantric tradition, right? This way, all the stages of the Buddha Dharma, right, kind of all is essentially present right here in this one statement, one teaching.
Pena semla se di nangla tekwa tumungwam tekwa memba ki nyamlin chasang di dudeba dawere. Tini sem machite sebe kapsula tekwa chenpo nangin tonga niki nangin tini doki nyamlin chasang di dudeba surawche. Sem ye ranshin wesawa os labyongdu ani ngaki nyamlin dudeba surawche. Tende samlatan chukduwa.
We can think about these 3 stages of the statement and how they pertain to the various vehicles and traditions of the Dharma. Is that, well, the first stage, the mind, right? The Buddha addresses the topic of the mind. That itself alone really includes all the practices of the fundamental vehicle of Shavakas. The second level of the statement, there is no mind. Right there, we see the Sutric tradition of the great vehicle of the Mahayana. The third level, the nature of the mind is luminosity. That's Tantric teachings, Tantric tradition of the great vehicle. So, right, we can really understand that from thinking about the statement this way.
Tatena shi anju duptala charwa ina ya pena semla sebe kapsula tini chir tekwa timongdang labordu tekwa chimbola tini usim niye binani semzambe kin dupta yana semzambe dupta kapsula zo di da semla se di tenla pakuyore shukchayati tini sem machite slaba kapsula umekin dupta tini sem ye ranshin wesalwa wo se de chidang nganzu umala tini chidang umatang uma chembo sini ile yawa chengore tenani tini uma chembo sini dos nyamsulin dos samatan chugore
Likewise, in this statement, we can also find the philosophical position of the various tenet systems of the Buddha Dharma, philosophical schools of Buddhism. And so, again, the first level there, the mind, that pertains to the philosophical tenet system known as the mind only, right, or Chitta Matra in Sanskrit, which kind of incorporated in both fundamental and the great vehicle. Both vehicles have. So among that's the Chitta Matra. Then next level, there is no mind. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Of course, why? Why is that statement pertains to the mind-only school? Well, because in that school, the main goal is to ascertain what is the mind, right? Resolve what is the mind. Thus, mind here, the first level, is the school of Chitta Matra. The second one, there is no mind. Well, that's the Madhyamika, the middle way philosophy. Right there. As for the third level, the nature of the mind is luminosity. Well, here, in terms of philosophical schools, we actually do differentiate between Madhyamika and what we call Great Madhyamika. And so this third stage is then, third level of the teachings pertains to the philosophical tenet known as the Great Madhyamika.
Teni ta sangi ki kakolo rimba sumla charwaina semla se digi nangla kakolo dangbo ki nega chasangde changde yore. Sem machikde sebe kapsula kap barbe ki teni ningbo chasangde dinala duite yobare. Sem ge ranshin wesalba wo sebe kapsula teni ka taima dang ngala soba ni sungshabe ki nega chasangde dinala duite yobare.
Right. Let me correct myself. I think I made a mistake in the translation when I said that Chitta Matra pertains to both fundamental Mahayana. No, Chitta Matra is the school of the great vehicle. I think what Khenpo meant is that mind, when we say that is incorporated in the philosophical tenet system of the fundamental vehicle, comma, and of the Chitta Matra that pertains to the great vehicle. So we have to separate that. Likewise, again, the statement here could be related to the turnings of the will. Right? As we know, the Buddha turned the Dharma wheel 3 times. And so the first level, the mind, that kind of refers to all the teachings, the antidotes, the practices of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. There is no mind, second level, that again incorporates all the various remedial practices, teachings, philosophy of the middle turning of the wheel, the second turning of the wheel. And the last statement, the nature of the mind is luminosity. That's the third final turning of the wheel of the Dharma, plus tantric teachings as well on top of that.
Di da sanji ki sungdi che tamche tang zu ningbu rawuchi dune sung xiaobe ki tsik tsa chumbuchi cha digi yorala ani ngara nam gyud dos dingi yode lama dinzu maan cheba tiik dinzu tangla nga zu lam ki rinpa sung nangdu dirang di long di sungu do wa cha chen dang zo chen la soba kapsuli da cha chen dang zo chen ki nyam len kari cheba ina drodang rinpa digarang re teni di indu da sanji ki getongpa nana sungshabe ki tsikre di teni semla sem machi te sem ge rangshin wesawa o se kinti tunda sumbu di ki nangla ani che tamche ki nyingbu di duye batang susu ki nyamling ki rimba blueprint ta wuchi di in samni ani nyamling che bayi na ani tangbo semla se di samlo tang tenla pa gom nipa teni sem machi te se di samlo tang gom teni sumba sem ge rangshin wesawa se di samlo tang gom to bayi na ishiragi yako yore.
In this way, I just demonstrated how the whole of the Dharma, the Buddha, is incorporated, sort of included in this one statement. And it is so important that we can really find it in all the various manuals of many teachers, masters of the past that illustrate or demonstrate us the various stages of the path. Especially we again see this quotation in the manuals of Mahamudra practice or Great Perfection practice. Well, why? Because actually this one statement found in the Prajnaparamita 8,000 verses. Prajnaparamita is really explains everything we need to know about how to approach the practice, right? It's the essence of the whole Dharma. It's the blueprint. And if you really, really understand that, take it to heart and say, right, this is it. This is the blueprint that I need to follow to realize the nature of the mind. And then we practice accordingly to this understanding, right? That it will be really, really great, bring about great results. So we go gradually. First of all, we reflect and meditate on the first level here. What is the mind? Then we move to the next one. We reflect, contemplate, meditate on there is no mind. And then we go to the third level and we think and reflect, put into practice this third final statement that the nature of the mind is luminosity. Right? If we go in this way, if we really keep that blueprint like a map in our mind, again, that will be really, really beneficial.
Tadila namjing anzu gom yung di kabla tini tanya di kare sunyo resana tik din sunangla. Tangbo simla sebe kapsula nangwa simsu ngotre pa sungare. Sim machite sede kapsula sim tongbar ngotre pa sungare. Tini sim ye rashin wesawa sede kapsula tini tongba sungjuk du ngotre pa suni nangwa tongba sungju suni dus tanya nangyore.
When we find the instructions on how to meditate on these 3 stages in the various manuals, especially of Mahamudra and Dzogpa Khenpo, Great Perfection, then we find the different types of instructions used, but actually exactly pointing out to this statement of the Buddha. So what are the instructions we usually see on how to meditate on these 3 stages, right, that I just explained? Well, when it comes to the first level, the mind, the instruction is to realize that all various phenomena are the mind. That's the first instruction we find in various manuals of the great teachers of the past. When they explain the second level here, there is no mind. What they instruct us is to realize that the mind itself is emptiness. Right? Next level. All phenomena are mind. The mind itself is emptiness. And when we move to the last one, the nature of the mind is luminosity, all they say now you need to realize the unity, right, of emptiness and luminosity. So here, therefore, we have, using different type of language, we can say we have these 3 stages, that is the appearances of phenomena, then the mind, the appearances, emptiness, unity.
Ta duna desum nangla du yung gore. Ine yang kasheki kenamba kapkabla tama de la sebo yom che de la tini shi de ya sungre. Onzo tarim se keje shi yonde. Tini kapsula tini nawa sem ten la papa sem tongba ten la papa tongba hundup du ten la papa hundup ta rangdol lo ten la papa tini sungto ba. Tama de la sungjuk se de la sebo su yonde ya shi dao tini sungre. Tini kapkabla nangwa tongba ani nawa sem tongba total sungju sinde yongudwa
Nika, shi, Nika di chikure, jutangni. Sometimes, as some of you already might have seen in various manuals, instructions, we have not these 3 stages only, appearances, emptiness, and unity, but 4. And the 4 are given in order to help us to to clarify some of these instructions, some of the stages of the view, right? So then the teachers elaborate further, and then we have 4 stages. So the one approach that we can find in those instructions of the masters is that they say, well, first again, it's appearances, the level of appearances, seeing them as the mind, realizing them as the mind. Then so my appearances is the first level, the mind is the second, then the mind being empty is the second level. And then they further elaborate on the unity for us to understand what is meant by unity, the third aspect. They say, well, the emptiness is spontaneously present. And the 4th stage, from spontaneous presence, we go to self-liberation. So appearances, emptiness, spontaneous presence, and self-liberation. Right? That's to again, to explain unity. And there's these 4 ways. Or there's another way also in to explain the unity in following the further elaborating on unity. Again, it's appearances, being the mind, which is emptiness. And then that emptiness is, the third level is freedom from all mental constructs. And then the next one is unity. Right? So this freedom, the state of freedom from mental constructs is included between emptiness and unity to help us to understand it better.
tadi sanje ki kacha swa tadi la tishe ti zo kyapu gore di ani tanda tunda di chikwa yimbala manzu chajin molam ki tangi shubana sinchita chajin molam korangi nyamlingi tomshi chasangi kapsula tini dekola kyanya yungure tawa tang kombaji tawe ani tende khandis ten la phapko gre se chita tini kombe ti khandis gomko gre se mangbo yorwa ta de nang ni ani ngi sikchi ni ji denang la sebu sungur di ani ma ngoti shugi
Di sangegi di tsarson danda di chekchen yana di chek.
semla semma chite semje ranshin wasa wase di takka chaswa tadi donda de tos dishe gyabro ba ani dishe di chaje malam ke nangla tawa ten la phaba tang komba nyamsulim be kapsula dishe geba gyabere ine yang tang e tinani sikje zo ni ji ani ma ngode shugi.
So we are at the moment we are concerned with the teachings of the Buddha, right? And how we can find this blueprint of how to realize the nature of the mind explained by the Buddha himself in the statement. As for the mind, there is no mind. The nature of the mind is luminosity. But I can't just leave it there. Actually, I need to elucidate that statement a little bit more. I need to elaborate on it. Again, we go back to elaborate on this statement of the Buddha. We want to go back to our main Mahamudra respiration prayer, right? Where, as I have already mentioned, the main premises, working basis is the view of the nature of the mind and then the practice of meditation on the nature of the mind, right? Basically, the view helps us to understand how to resolve what is the nature of the mind, what is it? And then meditation instructions explain them how to meditate on that nature of the mind, right? So we have view and we have meditation. And that's kind of the main, again, framework of the whole Mahamudra respiration prayer. But in order to give it a bit in a more clear and succinct way, I'm going to just use two stanzas, two verses from the Mahamudra respiration prayer that will help us to understand how to resolve it and how to meditate on it, right? The view and the meditation. So, right, to understand further the statement of the Buddha that we just looked at.
다 당보디 치제 당보디 타와 땐라 파베 갑술라 요래 춘엄 탐제 셈기 남툴 때 셈니 셈에 셈기 ngwe tong tong신 마가 찌야 나와때 레바르타니 시자쳐 버쇼스
So then we, among these two stanzas, two verses, the first one is verse 9 that explains the view. So the verse reads, all phenomena are the illusory display of mind. There is no mind. Mind is empty of an essence, empty and unceasing. It appears as anything whatsoever. Investigating this thoroughly, may we ascertain the ground.
그당 치코 되버래 마고에 가요 말에 단지 아주 도기 값을라 내가 당부지도 와 셈라 세티 디드니 단다디 차지 말람 값을라 치강 당부되기 되시게 거요래 최남 탐제 셈기 남줄 때 송바디 당이 산제기 셈라 세 송도와 어디니 직발에 산제기 셈라 세디다 가르시기로서나 곧되버지나 아니 최탐제 나와 탐제 아니 상에 랭이 대독 가르 중바이네 탐제디 셈라 템바당 셈데 중와당 셈기 타죄도바 샤와지당 셈기 아니 냥와지 마도 아니 셈기 만용위 최지 간수 열에서니 큰에 샤교요 말에 송발 딘디 셈라 세디기 들셰라 아니 챤남 탐지 셈기 남줄 때 세디
I think this verse is quite straightforward, right? Easy for us to understand. So if we look, let's connect it then with this Buddha statement. As for the mind, there is no mind. The nature of the mind is luminosity. The first level stage there, the mind, that exactly explained by, third Karmapa in this first line of the verse 9 that reads, all phenomena are the illusory display of mind. So when the Buddha said, as for the mind, here, right, that's what we need to understand, that all appearances, all various phenomena, however they present themselves to us as being excellent and helpful and good, or being negative, painful, difficult, all of them come from the mind. None of those appearances, phenomena, lie outside of the domain of mind. If they're not experienced by the mind, we cannot really establish their existence whatsoever, right? All of these appearances really come down to only our experience, what can be experienced by our mind, right? So again, to understand the Buddha's statement as for the mind, it's very, very nicely, clearly, right, elucidated in this one line here. All phenomena are the illusory display of mind.
Tadi ki tawa di yakuji rangyu le kebar chebala. Ani chiri nangba tang chidatu nganzu sem zamba ki tini najur choba ki shung dinzula tesam che gom kogor.
To gain this kind of perspective, to, in other words, in Dharmic terminology, to really generate this view, engender this view, we need to study, we need to investigate, of course, generally all the Buddhist teachings, but specifically here we mean among all the teachings of the Buddha is this school of Chittamatra, or even the one that we actually Yogacara, right? The Yogacharan school. And to resolve this view, that's where we need to go to study the philosophy of Yogacara / Chittamatra.
Kerangi taje tani kala kansam chi gomni kala kansam chi nyongwa ke ni nawa tham che semre do sini tha che ngishi chi keba ina ta kerang la tini rimba sum gi nani nawa semsu ngotwe bi ke tawadi rangyu le keba re sini peje lap chogre.
So once we investigate the view, study this view of Yogacara, right? Once we meditate on this view and gain some experience, I really right, personal experience with this view, then we can see that, well, the result of that should be, right, of our investigation, research, of our practice of meditation should be certainty. It's kind of a 100% a kind of decisiveness in our mind that all appearances are the mind, period, right? So when we have that kind of certainty, all what appears, all phenomena, just the mind itself, we can say then definitively that the view of being introduced to all appearances being the mind has really taken root in our being, right? That view has arisen in our mind stream.
Tene tsiga nipa semni semme semgi ngowo tong se di dangi sem machi te se shtowa o degi tuntati dishikya pare.
The second line of this verse in the Mahamudra Inspiration Prayer reads, "There is no mind. Mind is empty of an essence." Well, that line directly explains the second stage of in the Buddha statement, there is no mind.
Sena yul rangshin mepa shila shani and dindegi yul shekin sorkin nyamsu nyongengi sem korangi rangshin deyang ani ngoy matu pare sini ta chegugore.
Here, what needs to happen is that just like we have resolved that all appearances lack any, well, true establishment, true existence to themselves, in the same way, the mind, the experiencer of those various phenomena, right, is also not truly existent. So not only the objects that appear, but the subject that experiences all those various phenomena, objects, right, the experiencer is also emptiness, in essence.
Tini ta tsegang sumba tongxing maka jiyang nawa te se songdu tanji nganzu yakang la semgi rangshin wesaba wo se shtwa o ta teki tini dishedi di yongare.
The third line in this verse reads, empty and unceasing. It appears as anything whatsoever. That line directly explains, comments on the third stage from the Buddha statement, the nature of the mind is luminosity. Right? They are the same in meaning.
Tadi kante resena tini nganzu wesal se di saltong sungju jala koko warwa tanji kangla. Tanda te kapsula tini tongxing maka nangwa se di tongba se di tongba la koyu si tang tini nangwa se di tenjung la koyu re.
Got pamyepa?
Tongba se di tongba rawa. Makak se sikshidwa. Maka chiriyan nangwa se shidwa. O didi tini tenjung la koku kwa re. Ani tende ki tongba tang tenjung sungdu chukpa. Yang na tongba tang wesal sin lapa ina ta tanda chikpa re. O tende ki tini de nyibu di ngaranso lo trebe ki nga la samlo tang yung tu kawa dhabu tsuwa yung udwa. Sem la silab tu sem machi te se de lao udwa. Sem machi te silab yo tu sem la se de lao kin su daw shere. Yini yang dengi teng la dengi gege ma res, sungju res, dekar res na tini tongshi maka chiyan nangwa te se dita tanyi ngansu sumba, rimba sumba, wesalwa se di tindechila koko gore.
How is that so that this line, empty and unceasing, it appears as anything whatsoever? Really, it's the same in meaning as the nature of the mind is luminosity. So we need to understand what we mean by this word, term, luminosity. Luminosity, as I have mentioned earlier in this Dharma session, is the unity of clarity and emptiness. Right? It's that unity of clarity and emptiness we call luminosity. Now here in this line, it said empty and unceasing. Right? So here the first word empty, well, in our unity of emptiness and clarity, well, empty here refers to emptiness. Unceasing refers to interdependent origination, unceasing dependent origination of all phenomena, which is also known as clarity. That's here they're the same, right? Dependent origination, clarity. So empty and unceasing, in other words, is exactly this kind of unity of emptiness and clarity, which is luminosity. Okay? And it appears as anything whatsoever, right? As it says here. That's exactly luminosity. That is the unity of emptiness and clarity, or emptiness and dependent origination. When we hear the statement of the Buddha is for the mind, there's no mind, the nature of it is luminosity, we feel uneasy because we feel like there is contradiction there. When we hold the first stage kind of in our mind, in our practice, as for the mind, the second one doesn't make sense. It's kind of canceled out, right? Well, there's no mind. Wait a moment. We're just talking about the mind. When we're moving to the second stage and say there is no mind, then we sort of feel like, well, that directly contradicts the previous one, the mind, right? They kind of cancel each other out. So that's how we feel. But in reality, there is no contradiction because of the unity. So we can't stop with these two. The third stage, luminosity, directly then points out to us that there is no contradiction because everything is the unity. Everything is empty and unceasing, appears as anything whatsoever, which is the nature of the mind, luminosity, right? As the Buddha stated.
Ta didi chik nganzu kote wadawa jeba ina pishe di sum chidwa rimba sumbotela tapshe dawdi nganzu namgi positive semla sidi ji yore sing so shlaidwa the positive sem machi te sidi yomare sing so shlaidwa negative tani semgi rangshin wesawa wa yana sungjuk selabe kapsula beyond both raba namgi ngazu tadu ki shebe kapsula semla sedla duba sigre sem machi te sedla gakpa sigre ngazu keche kari shena ta gaudub ki keche shungrwa teni ine thardu ki nelu di kari resna teni gaudub ni le deba chi ingo go res thardu ki nelu dan thardu ki tabati gaudub ni ki nangla ani hla deba ina thardu cha thu ke mare sungare teni ta dikordi chaji malam khorana la ya ning je bu ji sung yore woni yoba main gave kyang ma six mepa main khorde kunji shis galdu main sungju umelams tatal simji chunyi tobar sho se shwa de yang da nganzu di kom yong du nganzu la kang e tin shung go yorwa di kang a se la yang ba de she kyap sha ba chi ning je bu sung
Well, let me make it a bit more easy to understand. So when we presented with these 3 stages of the path that lead us to realize the nature of the mind, right? Given by the Buddha, this kind of method, mind, no mind, luminosity. When we go with the first stage, we feel like, oh, there is mind. It's a very positive statement, right? It really affirms something. It's there. Positive, as Khenpo said in English. When we go to the next level, there is no mind. We feel like, okay, now it's cancelled. That's negative, sort of. And the nature of the mind is luminosity, that unity. It's actually what lies beyond of being positive or negative. Now I'm using these words, negative, positive, but actually in philosophical terminology, we have a specific terms in Dharma and Buddhist philosophy to address this. Like what I just said, positive, it's actually, we say affirmative. We affirm something. And negative is the negation. So we affirm and we negate. We affirm and we negate, right? That's philosophy. But in reality, the ultimate view has to be where we go beyond affirmation and negation. If we still hold on to either like it is there, right, affirming it, or we negating it and saying it's not there, we have not reached the ultimate view. We're still stuck with this kind of either or affirmation or negation. In reality, our ultimate view lies beyond these two. And that's the 3rd stage. So absolutely we have to go to this 3rd stage of the unity, right? That is beyond this kind of affirmations, negations. And in the Mahamudra Respiration Prayer, again, the 3rd Karmapa put it so really beautifully. In the following verse, actually verse 11, he exactly addressed this issue that we all might experience in our practice, this kind of difficulty, right? Kind of it's there or it's not there, right? That there is this kind of seeming contradiction, which is actually not contradiction, but we might experience this difficulty. And to address that, to help us, he said, it is not existent, as even the victorious ones have not seen it. It is not non-existent, as it is the basis of all samsara and nirvana. This is not a contradiction, as it is the middle way of unity. May we realize the dharmata of mind, the nature of mind, free from extremes.
Dichidu chidang anzu tangbo dan nipa di re la sanotana toye shira takali khabo mepe soro shire. Ine yang da sungju se di 페제 sungjuk ki tsik di pena nga zu computer dawa jimba ina computer di nanglo la khorang ki software ki read je matube ki jik lukba ina kogi zane read je thugu midwa di nashi nga zu ki nizing ki foundation la sui xiaobe ki sem ki teng la ani sungjuk se di zane read je thugu mare di nida nga zu la kale khasho di nangwa re tongba re sidu dezam ki kale yo mare ine kale khasho di sungjuk re sebe kakso la shida ki kale khabo chiyo re di yumi kimsen kare re sina nga zu ki sem se di ki pena nga zu computer ina the fundamental language dawa di 0 dan 1 re dowa kisi kirang la number 2 jite sha kwa ina kogi kyone lega je thugu marwa de nashi nganzu ki sem ki lega jitang di nizing ki lega jiga re yopa yana mepa di niga sungju se ji zani nganzu shong tu yo mare kangen di re
When we go through these 3 stages in our study, in our practice, it's not very hard for us to understand or even realize the first and the second, respectively, right, in their own turns. The difficulty arises when we reach the 3rd stage, that of the unity. There, it's really hard for us. It's like the computer that has its own software. If we try to upload some other alien to our computer software, it can't read it. So our mind has created this kind of dualistic foundation, dualistic framework. And therefore, our mind cannot read this so-called unity, right? It's like it can't process it. In itself, to understand what we mean by appearances, that's no problem. Understand emptiness in its own right. Also, it's not that hard, really. But it's the unity that we really struggle with. And the reason is like basically the example here is that, the fundamental language of computers is 0 and 1, 0, 1, right? If we try to put there 2, it can't function, it can't work, can't process it. So our mind is like that. It's dualistic fixation, can read and understand either existent or non-existent, right? It's either this or that, 0, 1, 1, 0. But it can't really process the beyond one, the one of the unity. That's where it's really extremely hard for us all.
di chidi pena nganzu computer ki language la 01 main ba chini angi ni pa ta usum ba lushana di kho ki language chag marwa khoi kar reson di ki process che tu marala di ki output ka che tik marwa ten na shinge nam gi shugu sungju se de ngone china nga ju chik de beje tang ge ro nga ju chidang shwe nang la ina ngone china di nga ju di chik khora mare samlo ya bu tang ba ina kar resna chik se di krang ki go yong de kapsul semna nam do ji sha yong ro ba shar ku ro ba penna apples lab di kapla sing do yim ba ma o yim ba do do yim ba ji lo la sha ku do ba di ma to chik cha ge mar ba denji ji sha ku ro ba tene oni samlo tang ba ina ta nga ju chege ki sungju se di chik di beje tang ge ro de ine ya nga ju lo la shar ge yo ma re di kisi krang ki lo la ji shar ge yo na di sungju mai be kyap da.
So again, the example that I just provided, the computer language, right? 0, 1, that its main really processing operating system. If we try to use 2 or 3, the number 2, 3. It's not the language of the computer, so it can't process it and there will be no output. So now, going back to the meaning, I usually explain this. It's really important point about the term unity. We use this, right? It's the Dharma, it's the word in the Dharma. Well, we just used it a lot in the teachings. We say unity, right? Unity. But in reality, it's actually does not really become a word as we define word in the Buddha Dharma. So to define what we mean by word, when we use sounds, specific sounds, right, we utter them. If it provides an image, right, kind of an abstract idea, we also call it object universal, then it becomes a word. For example, I say apple. And now you have an abstract, I have a picture, you to relate to what I just uttered, A-P-P-V-L-E, you have an image, like a red, green, round, fruit, eating, right? That's there. It's a word. That is functions as a word. Now, unity does not do that. We say that, we utter it, but actually the twist is, if it does produce some kind of abstract idea or image, right, like an apple kind of, or in your mind, this kind of same with the unity, if it produces something, then it's not the unity. It's not.
Tordina nganzu nizingi lola sunjuki tenji di shatu kumare.
Nizingi lola donchi shar tugimare.
Ki pena nganzu kawasana gares tenji shagdwa, pumbasana tenji shagdwa, ade shatu kumare.
Sunjukti shar tugimare. Right. Usually it's because of how our dualistic fixation works, in short, is that we hear something and it gives us this object universal, this kind of abstract image. Like we say a pot, a vessel. You have the image, you know what you can relate to it, we already have that picture in your mind. I say a pillar, the column, pillar. You have that. But you see, the word sunjuk in Tibetan, unity, it does not do that. There is nothing that can arise, really. Because dualistic framework and unity, no, that does not work that way.
Da ina yang nganzu tawe ki takugore sunju sayadala. Ani dile nyingje wachi sungore dinala. Tagyu meba chila yang tayongdu tongyu meba chi tongyongre sungbare. Pena chaje malam koranala tarme semla yang tapitse tongme deni jishin lagir tong sikshtuwa. Yang kapkabla da nizen loki sunjuk totugu mare se yongdu da di yuksha kosare samsamlo dine yongsi bari yang dine yang mare. Torduna ngansui dande susu ki chik sunjuk re dingi duwa di sunjuk memba di hagwe ke chumbare singe di jini shugore.
Okay, important point here, disclaimer, right? Somehow we still all need to realize unity, right? We need to resolve unity, realize it. Well, but then what to do, right? Well, actually, again, in the Mahamudra Aspiration Prayer, we can find another beautiful words that in verse 17, the first two lines read, looking again and again at the mind that cannot be looked at. What cannot be seen is seen clearly, just as it is. So unity is something that cannot be seen. And by looking at it, over and over and over again, eventually what cannot be seen is clearly seen as it is. Okay. So we shouldn't, what's important here, what I'm trying to say is that when I told you, well, our dualistic mind cannot really process or have idea about unity, where you have an image what's unity, it's not that actually, okay? I'm not trying to tell you like, okay, then just give up and don't even think about unity, don't try to realize it, don't try to think, understand what it is. No, that's not the point. What I'm just trying to warn you is, at least very important step is, first of all, to acknowledge that what we think unity is, it is not. All right? That's what I was trying to kind of point out to you at this moment.
Sungjuk se di Treatise deshe gyabyon du kerangzu ge gochu ge mare tini ta karangzu siram nang arang chasang anju gochu ge mare tini shirasimda lang mindu simde che de kare du sena sungjuk se di tinde jire sena gochu ro do ba ta di nyanga chae.
So when I explain, well, when we study today unity, right, my worry is not that you, and actually not you, myself included, all of us, right, that we will not understand and realize what is unity. That's not my concern at all. I have much bigger concern, much bigger worry that somehow you will think that you understood what is unity, and you will have some kind of idea that unity, it is like that, it is like this. That's much more worrisome actually for all of us.
Tadi sungjuk de keje she on de lamsang anju la topa te zu mang bu chung go re ndi jine to se shu bai.
So when we hear in the teachings unity, we all have right away this kind of doubts, questions. That's why I spent some time talking about it today.
Ta dini sikang shibati chidangda molam di sigrwa osal kan se lekbar tani shiza chopar shok sungye di karresana da tenreki nawa sem yimba sem tongba yimba ani tongba sungjuk yimba tela ani soso topi sherapki takje yakbo tangni jeba jeni ani ta semla oni tenre redu sambe getini tokba tezu meba rodo chobaji yogre lare ta tenre rodo choni ngishe kesona kawase kari segere dila tawa segere tezu meba ani tenre kita tawa di rangyula kebar sho sini molam kebar to wa khong.
And just to finish then with the last fourth line of our initial verse number 9, that reads, investigating this thoroughly, may we ascertain the ground. So what we've seen with the previous 3 lines is that first, what we ascertain is that appearances are the mind. Secondly, the mind itself is empty of an essence. Third point is emptiness is the unity. It's unity. And now, with this 4th line, we're given this kind of instruction that we need to investigate this thoroughly with using our own wisdom of discerning all phenomena, discernment. We need to investigate the appearance being mind, mind being empty, emptiness being unity, right? And we need to all arrive at the point where we're absolutely certain about this. As the line concludes, may we ascertain the ground. May we all have that certainty without having any doubts about this, right? Appearance is mind, mind, emptiness, emptiness, unity. When we have no doubts about that whatsoever, when we have a real certainty about it, that certainty we call the view. So may we all then give rise to that view in our minds.
Laso, tatring dordina, anzu simnubu nelukdi komgugare, tini komdangi rimbatao, di neka chambu jicha digere, dini di kombe ki ta chidang semne ngobu nilu kharang di karres na saldung sungju deres lapchu ini anda dinde ki sem ngobu nilu kombe rimba dawdi sanji ki semla semmachi di semje rangshin wesawo se di sumere ani tekin danda di danda kasu babe chaje malam ki nangla tawak tembe kapdang komba tembe kapsula jidang mangbo sumere ta denani nge tsikchi zogu ni di dini shubare ta denani diring dini tawa tembe kapsula ta dende chini dini tenla papu re se di nipa di gombe nyamsu lembi lendang di ani kandis lengu gare se di jema mitun shugis.
Well, let's conclude with our session today. In short, what we look is that, well, when we talk about the third wisdom that comes from meditation on what? On natural state, on the nature. When it comes to natural state, right, we have the one of nature of just phenomena and then the nature of the mind. So we're looking now at the nature of the mind. If we were to just give one kind of clear answer, what is the nature of the mind? We can say it's the unity of clarity and emptiness. But if we want to understand then how do we approach this unity of clarity and emptiness? What are the stages for actually us understanding it and then practicing it? Then we looked at the Buddha statement that explains the stages of understanding, realizing the nature of the mind, this unity of clarity and emptiness, the statement of, as for the mind, there is no mind, the nature of the mind is luminosity. And then to further really understand the statement itself, right, given by the Buddha, I wanted to use two verses from the Mahamudra Aspiration Prayer, the one that will explain how to resolve the view in terms of this statement of the Buddha. And that's what we have done today. And then the second verse that I'm going to explain in the following Dharma session will address then how to meditate then, right? How to meditate on the statement of the Buddha, on these three stages.
Janju semju rimbo che ma ge ba na ge gyuren che ge ba nyambara me ba ya gong ne gong du pe la ba re sho